Hello, everyone. This is a Walk for Change interview. My name is Bobby Rodrigo, and I'm your host. Walk, the number 4, change.us. So the Walk for Change is about empowering people for human rights. We intend on making change, and we want you to make it with us. Walk, the number 4, change.us. Come check us out, support us, volunteer, get involved. In June of this year, we're going to walk across the country. We're going to start in California. We're going to wind up in DC. We're bringing legislation, policy, advocates. We want to make change. There's so many things going on that is not working in our society. Everything from prohibition, criminal justice reform, how we care for our veterans and their quality of life, homelessness, medical care, plant medicine, our food, our environment. It's a long list. And we, as a society, intend to make a stand and to take a walk. So come and take that walk with us. Again, walk, the number 4, change.us. Check it out. Join us in any way that you can. We're walking across the country, we're walking across Canada, we're walking across Mexico, we're walking across the United States in the north, in the central, in the south, in your community. We are here for you. It's about your choices. Why you walk for change is different, probably, than why I walk for change. Sometimes it's the same. But why you walk for change is just as important as why I walk for change. So pleased to have a special guest today. Everybody that comes on the Walk for Change interviews is special, of course. And I've had the pleasure of interviewing her previously, Libertarian presidential candidate Sorinne Ardeleanu. So without making us wait any longer, say hello to Sorinne Ardeleanu. How you doing, Sorinne?
I'm doing really well. How about yourself?
I'm good. It's great to see you. I thought I would give you a background that resonates because you have a heart. And I throw a heart in there too. Let everybody know that
I love it.
the theme of today, at least, or the theme anytime we talk for sure, is there's always love. And I'll remind everybody, and you can, of course, throughout our interview here, is it's love, logic, and liberty is the basis of who you are and who you say we do best at. So that's so high again. So tell us a little bit about that. Let's start there. Let's talk about the 3 L's.
Well, I think it needs to start with love for everybody. Something I learned along my own journey is that most of us are not taught how to love ourselves. And so it creates this void. And we want to feel love from others because that's what society shows us, is that, you know, we need to fit in, we need to do this, do that, dress this way, buy that, whatever, to be loved.
You mean they're not right?
No. The void just gets bigger, you know, and the grass keeps looking greener the further and further, you know, away. And so it's a practice truly to learn how to love yourself and to feel complete. Because when you learn how to love yourself, you don't take from others, you give to others, and then they're apt to give back. It's just natural that we reap what we sow. And so just starting everything with love is a wonderful place to be. I mean, as you had me in the waiting room, I wanted to make sure that I was in a very positive mood and high vibration. I was just thinking, I love you. You know, that's why I'm running for president, because I love you, because I love my human family, because I love life. It doesn't matter if I don't like you or I don't, you know, or I don't know you or anything like that. I still love you. I love the life that is inside of you because it's the same life that is inside of me. It doesn't discriminate like we do. And so, you know, I'm learning to like people, all people, as well as I love them. But, you know, these are practices, and it's like the golden rule, you know, do unto others as you want them to do to you. But if you don't love yourself, you subconsciously want people to not love you too.
Yeah.
And so, I talk about this a lot. We always reap what we sow. And so it's important to learn to love ourselves as whatever, people can call it new agey, spiritual, whatever. But it's just a fact of life that if you don't master loving yourself, it's going to influence the rest of your life in very challenging ways. Yeah, if you learn how to love yourself, to me, that also means like feeding yourself correctly. It means filtering, what are you putting in your mind, because you're alone with your thoughts more than anything else. And so
That's
if
a good
you're
point. That's a very
listening,
good point. Yeah.
yeah, if you're listening to things or reading things or watching things that don't make you feel good, that's not really loving towards yourself. I mean, these are just little things. I'm not trying to tell people what to do. It's just something I've learned, like in my path to being healthy, to feeling grounded, to feeling clear in life. Like I've really had to learn how to love myself. And as I've done that, I've noticed so many people out there that don't love themselves. And I don't tell them this because I don't want to hurt their feelings. I don't think I'm any better, but it's just, we all have to make that choice to truly love ourselves if we want others to love us and if we want to be more loving towards others as well.
It's interesting. Self-care is so important. And I work, as you know, I work a lot in nonprofit work, a lot of disaster relief, particularly, which is very, very tough. Some of the things that I've seen and experienced has been very tough. And one of the things that we try to do in the community when we're paying attention is to make sure we do self-care, because you're taking a pounding as well. And then, and yet you're being compassionate. You're there to help. And like you say, if you don't take care of yourself, don't love yourself, it's going to get worse. And the impact of what happened, you're going to forget yourself, and you're going to wear yourself out and destroy your whatever heart that you had because of what you're seeing. What you're saying resonates, at least with me, and I hope everybody is catching what you're saying
Yeah.
about self.
And also, this is very logical because
Second L.
if you don't love yourself, you actually become a burden to others, and that's not what anybody really wants. But if you're not able to provide for yourself at least peace of mind, then it's like you just radiate that out to everybody else, and it's like a domino effect. And so logically, the best thing to do as a human being in the society is to love yourself. And as far as logic goes, that's also a very loving thing to do, because when we're logical, we make better decisions. And because like right now, what's going on in the world, there's a lot of, let's call it panic, fear, hysteria. There's a lot of negative emotions
They
going
put
on.
words together and make new panic words. Have you noticed that?
Yeah. Well,
yeah,
I don't know if you saw, but I wrote an article about, I call it social closeness, because I really don't like the two words together, social distance. We really should be calling it physical distance, because right now, more than anything, we need to be socially close, because there are many people who are not used to being physically alone. And so when you tell them social distance, this is planting a certain seed in their mind. And, back to logic, if people are feeling down and they're not reasoning, they're not being logical because they have all these negative emotions, they're going to make poor decisions. And so we need to be socially connected. We need to be reasonable. We need to be grounded so that we can be more loving, and so that we can have more liberty in life.
We need to highlight that a little bit, because that is really important. I was having a discussion earlier this morning, through the Disaster Relief Network and things, about how isolated, for example, our elderly are feeling right now throughout the world. And one of the people I was, a longtime friend I've known since forever, was talking about, how he was in our neighborhood and where I grew up, and how, it's empty, and how he's seeing elderly people just being, dissed, I guess is the simplest way of putting it. And with all of this, like you say, social distance, that is a major, I had missed that. I missed it. I'm really glad you're bringing this up, because you're right. It's physical distance, but we need to make sure and stay connected with our neighbors and families and friends and community, just to be able to make sure everybody is okay, and to have a normal discussion. Give people an outlet of conversation. That's a very good point. I'm glad you raised that.
Yeah, well, I called my mom today. I told her I love her. I told her, take it easy. This is a vacation, rest. take care of yourself, love yourself, sleep as much as you want, because she works a job in retail and in commission, and they sent her home, yesterday she worked, and today they told her, take the week off, but starting next week, call in every day, even though the mayor of San Francisco said that we have this, stay home order unless your work is essential until April 7th, which is, more than a week from now. And so it's just, it's just kind of interesting. So I realized I have to tell my mom, who lives alone, like, I love you and take care of yourself.
Sure.
Because I'm not going to go over there physically. I'm healthy, but it is, I believe, like, who knows, I could be a carrier. Any of us could be, and we don't know it, right?
Well,
and
we don't know enough about it when it gets right down to the particular situation that we're in with the coronavirus. We don't have proper testing, and we certainly don't have, when I say proper, we don't have the numbers at all.
Yeah.
I was with a very good friend of mine, Sharon Rayvert, the other day, and she was on the phone with the Georgia Department of Health, which is where she lives, which is where I was at her house. And the Georgia Department of Health told us, in no uncertain terms, that they did not have any testing in the state of Georgia. For example, I've heard that Oregon is the same way. And of course, we know that, for example, the people who have lots of money, they are doing testing. We just saw a thing today about some more NBA players that have it, and 3 of them that have it did not have any symptoms. So again, the information and the accuracy of the situation is still developing for a number of reasons. And what's important here, in my opinion, and I believe you agree with me, is, we can sit here and bash on the government as much as we want. It's easy to do any day of the week, regardless of the situation. That our government is ridiculous when it comes to public benefits to the community. And I don't mean the present one, I mean, period, in my lifetime at least. But we need to take care of our communities. We have to take care of our communities. We got to make sure that everybody's okay, the information's good. We need to make the changes that are necessary, and whatever we can do. I comment on that.
Yeah. Well, and that's the wonderful thing about being alive today in 2020 is there's so many different ways to connect and be socially close to one another without the physicalness. I mean, I started meeting people online back in 1996, and it's only gotten bigger and bigger for people to connect virtually.
Was that you I was talking to back then? I was on the couch in Denver. I remember it was the dial-up, and I was shopping at King Supers on the thing. It was you? I just now understand, yes.
Yeah, my screen was black and green. I had an Amiga Commodore. But yeah, I mean, we've come so far.
Back then, oh gosh, yes.
We can see each other.
Yeah, I remember thinking, I brought the King Super thing. I'm in Denver, and I'm on a dial-up, and I'm browsing, learning and seeing what's out there. And I ran across King Supers, and I like to shop. I like supermarkets. I have my whole life, and I'm looking at this, and it's telling me that I can order food from the computer. And I'm like, oh my God, they want us on the couch. I want to go to the store, but then I did it. I browsed through it. I'm like, I'm going down the aisle. I can't see it, but I mean, they're telling me we have these things here on this page. I'm like, oh my God, they want us on the couch so bad. But it's interesting that you say that, because this was literally in 1996 as well. I remember it well. So yeah, we've been kind of talking around the world to people very easily. You and I are not, we are 3,000 miles apart, you and I right now, and yet you're in the room. We're hanging out. It's a great thing. I have to tell you a story. So a lot of people know I'm deep in the disaster relief space for a very long time. And each situation is different. Basically, I've learned a long time ago that whatever the situation is, it tells us what it needs, essentially. The last time I was really deep in the space was a 3-headed monster that we had with Harvey, Irma, and Maria, and then the fires in California. So I was gone for 2 years. It was ridiculous. But before that, some of the other ones that I was involved with, particularly Sandy. So I lived in Atlanta a long time, and I'm from New York, and grew up there, born and bred. My family's there, a lot of families there, tons of friends. And I never left my house for Sandy. I was awake literally for 3 days. I didn't sleep more than a brief pass out, wake up. And the entire time I communicated with thousands of people via social media. And I did not have respect for it the way I do now until then. And I, there was nobody had any power except for if they ran out to the car to charge their phones and things like that. Everybody was relying on Twitter and Facebook and texting. And I, of course, I was in a place that wasn't impacted by the storm. So all of the information that I could gather to them, no matter what it was, where the floods are, where the electric's going on, where the danger zones are, how to get work. We actually hired like 3,000 local people to help restore order to the businesses up there. And it gave me a new sense of the tool we have here that could be used and should be used to help our communities as much as possible, just the way you mentioned. It reminded me of that. I just wanted to let you know that had happened, and I totally understand where you're coming from.
It's great to bring that up because, there are some people who think that technology is really bad. And the thing is, it's neither good or bad. It's how you utilize it.
Exactly.
Right?
Like anything else. Yeah.
It's all relative. It's just, anything, too much water, can be bad. Too much air can be bad. But, so it's really just a matter of the circumstances. And with technology, it's like, as you were speaking before this emergency story that you shared, I was also thinking about growing up. I was watching the Jetsons. That was, in the 80s. And, dun, dun, dun. and I started imagining living in a world where I wouldn't have to go outside for anything. Right. And I've realized that's where we are, but that's actually not a good thing outside of what's going on right now, right? Like right now, it's great to have these conveniences. Everything can be delivered to us. We can connect this way. But once this passes, it's really important to start to connect with each other in real life because, again, back to love.
And with Mother Earth. And with Mother Earth. We need to be grounded with Mother Earth all the time.
These technologies, they're tools, but the flip side of them is that they do disconnect us from reality. They do disconnect us from nature. And a big part of my platform is working with natural laws. And the more removed we are from nature, the harder it is for us to observe how nature truly operates. I live in San Francisco. It's a concrete jungle for the most part, but I do make time.
Sure is.
I go to the park every day. Unfortunately, we're still allowed to do that. But
imagine that allowed. Anyway,
interesting times. That's relative too, right? Like what is for the greater good right now? Because we don't really understand what this is. I'm not going to speculate, but I do feel like there's some information that's being withheld from the masses that perhaps there's something that we don't know about. But, from what we do know, it's like, and I'm not picking sides. This is just a question to think about, right? Like, is it worth crippling our economies, crippling people who are financially insecure to save 1% of the population perhaps, right? I'm not choosing sides. It's just something to think about because we don't really understand where this is going, but we do understand we understand at least partially the consequences of what we're doing to slow this down from it's taking its natural course. So it's very complex. I don't know what the right answer is, but I don't know if you've been thinking about this and what your thoughts are. You've been around.
Well, I always think about, like I'll decide is easy for me. Choosing sides is easy for me. And I'm sure it's easy for you. And I'm not trying to downplay what you said. I understand where you're coming from. My approach is always from the blunt force object that I am is the government's on one side and we the people are on the other. And how do we get public benefit to the community the best way? How do we help our neighbors, families, and friends in the community the best way, regardless of where it comes from? I mentioned Harvey, Irma, and Maria. The thing that really, and I say a blunt force object, and I really am in this area because I basically told everybody, it didn't matter who it was, I don't care who you are, I don't care where you're coming from, government, private, doesn't matter. As long as the aid and the help is getting to the hands of the people, I could care less, I'll work with you. And if you don't make sure that happens, I'm gonna roll over you like a freight train. And I don't mean to sound like somehow negative, but to me, if more of that was done, from people in our government, ethical behavior, integrity, things like that. A lot of our problems in informational voids would be solved. You know, we have this tendency of, well, should we, like you were saying, I'm sure there's not all the information out there. Well, why? Well, because we don't want to cause a panic. Well, screw that. Let's get, you know, can
We're
we just
beyond
get
that.
Yeah, really. I mean, can we just get the information? Let's, you know, it's like,
We're
somebody
grown-ups, we can handle it.
yeah, exactly. It's like somebody doesn't tell you something because you're going to get mad and you love them, right? So let's just, a family thing. Let's just say your children don't tell you something because they know you're going to be mad. I'm like, just tell me, I'll get over it. Okay, we'll figure it out and move on. But if you hold it back, and then 3 years later I find out, what do you think's going to happen then? You know, just let's, like you say, we're grown-ups. And if we can't handle it, we'll have our friends and neighbors to lean on who can. That will help us do it. You know, together.
Well, and also the more information we, the people, have, the better decisions we can make.
Yes.
You know, if information is being withheld from us, we can only make certain conclusions from the information we have, and they might not be the right conclusions. And so we might make poor decisions that end up costing us even more in the long run.
Which happens every single day in this country from the government. Every single day. I mean, we can, let's loop back around. Why aren't they teaching the endocannabinoid system in our medical institutions? It is a real system inside our body. It exists. It should be in my 4th grade science book when I went to 4th grade. It's not. A perfect example. Meanwhile, you get arrested when you are actually helping your body by using this product that every mammal benefits from because of the receptor systems in the mammal's body. So they can be broke, and we can give example after example after example of these type of things, unfortunately.
Oh yeah, whenever you said that, I was saying, or, you know, just teaching people how to reason correctly. That's not something I learned how to do until I was in my 30s, and I had to seek it out on my own. And I thought I was a reasonable person. It's like, no, I was pretty emotional and pretty programmed by what society was telling me to believe and accept as reasonable. And that's the thing, you know, why I talk about logic so much, is that I believe in everybody's potential to be reasonable and logical.
Totally.
But they're not being offered this early on. And if they're able to think for themselves and to distinguish, like, what's their thought versus what's somebody else's thought. I think we might have talked about this last time, I'm not sure, but about like hypnosis, for example. Hypnosis is just another word for conditioning and programming. It's a way to influence somebody's behavior without them challenging you. Right. And so, you know, this is, you know, if we're just, you know, the blind leading the blind, you know, where do we end up?
It's interesting listening to my son complain about the time he wasted in high school because of his reasoning why he says that. It's not a flip comment. You know, he's experiencing life now as a young adult, and he's like, you know, high school was a complete waste of time the way they were teaching. And he gives me examples, and I can't dispute it. Luckily, you know, he learned things outside of high school, of course, but he just dismisses so much of it because, you know, and don't get me wrong, you know, yes, I learned how to do math, but like the civics aspect of it, he's just furious because they don't even teach you how anything operates in this country. I know. And it's really that fundamental. We see it all the time. We see history being changed constantly now in our education system. You know, let's gloss things over. You know, we have states that have spent time in changing the way history is reporting, for example, slavery in their state, you know, and how they're saying, well, it wasn't as bad. I mean, basically what it wasn't as bad as it seemed. Like, are you kidding me? You know, I have an issue with, for a long time, I heard somebody speak one time on one of the talk shows in the afternoon years ago, maybe at least 20 years ago. And they were talking about how they didn't like the labels. And I hate labels, I can't stand them. And they were talking about how, you know, how many generations do we have to have in this country when we're just American? And I got to thinking about it, and it's like, you know, we have Italian American, Irish American, you know, Spanish, all this stuff. And I'm in total agreement. And lately I've been thinking more about that because of all of the labeled Americans. The one that didn't get to choose to come here is Black people. They were brought here against their will. So it's, you know, and like you say, reason and things like that, you know, you take things in perspective, particularly when you're liberty minded. I believe that changes a lot of perspectives, and liberty always wins in a debate in my mind. And so thinking about that, it's just, it's crazy. We have a crazy world. We have a crazy world. Anyway.
Can we talk about liberty a little bit?
Just a little. Isn't that the third L?
Yes.
It's the third L,
Well,
right? It's love, logic, and then liberty.
liberty,
Yes.
yeah.
Let's do that
Because you
one.
got me
Let's try that one.
excited.
Yes.
So you can't have real liberty without love and logic first, because what I've realized, because I've been doing my own thing now for almost 11 years, I've had complete freedom to do what I want, when I want, how I want, and with whom I want. And it is the greatest responsibility that any human being can have, is having complete freedom, because you get to choose what you do with yourself and with your life. And you get to reap the direct consequences of your actions and inactions. And if you haven't learned how to love yourself and love others, if you haven't learned how to be logical, you are going to make really not good decisions, and it's going to be painful. Do harm. Yeah, to yourself and to others. And so I've realized that even though I believe that freedom is our inalienable, you know, birthright, that it is something that we must prepare people for, because somebody who hasn't learned how to reason correctly, somebody who hasn't learned how to love themselves and love others, it's, you know, it's just kind of like a loose cannon. Anything can happen. And I see the potential in everybody. And so I believe that with guidance, like role models, not government, you know, enforcing morality, but people like you and I, people who are viewing this show, by leading through example, we influence others to make better decisions, you know, by being open about the things that interest us and the things that we invest in, like our personal development. We inspire others to do that. You know, it no longer becomes like, oh, you know, I invest so much in my education, by the way. It's something I'm going to do forever. You know, right now, I'm a little bummed. I have to miss a class at the end of the month because I can't leave my city, and I don't know if I'm going to come back, you know, if I'm going to be able to come back. You know, I can't educate myself. But by talking about these things and not being embarrassed about investing in myself, I inspire others to do the same. And, you know, we all do whatever it is that we're doing that is an investment in ourselves, whether it's education, whether it's a certain type of lifestyle, like being transparent about it with others. It helps others to make those decisions when they do have more freedom in their life, because I believe we all deserve that right. Like I said, I believe, you know, we're born with this right, but our country deserves to give it to us, you know, but we also need to realize it's a huge responsibility, because you need to learn how to say no to things that are harmful to you and others, and how to say yes to things that are good for you and others.
Yeah, it's very true, and very, very well stated, for sure. Liberty is absolutely a responsibility, without a doubt. And, you know, it's a word and a philosophy that's taken for granted, and also propagandized like everything else. You know, we see political discussions in so many arenas that are just, I just shake my head and go, we're not having a real debate here, or we're not having a real discussion. A debate things different. We're not having a real discussion here because the facts are wrong, or the philosophy is misstated. The true nature of liberty or any other particular issue. We're doing it so much. And I think a lot of it loops back around to what you were saying earlier about the social distance that we are, the disconnection that we have to, you know, I remember growing up and sitting outside, being outside all the time, but just sitting with my neighbors and learning how to play chess at a very high level, because my friend's father played chess, and he would sit down outside in the yard, and we would go by and sit down and do that, for example. And you'd have the interaction of learning something from an adult, for example, or, you know, your friend who could do this thing better than you, and you could do that thing better than them, and how there was a lot of connection that is different now, even to the standpoint of children working together on schoolwork, which is now done virtually instead, which is fine for the convenience sometimes. But remember, that was a big deal. get together and sit down and do things together. That isn't done as much as it used to be, unfortunately, because of this disconnect that we have. The bad parts, or the bad uses, I should say, of technology, for example.
Well, I feel like you're kind of dancing around something, or at least to me, I have a connection. Like what you're saying is making me think about artificial intelligence.
Sure.
And how, we're starting to automate all these things, and
Yeah.
how, I had to learn how to write in cursive. I played the piano, I played chess, I learned different languages. I had to learn the times tables. I drive a manual, transmission. All these things are essentially languages, and they challenge your brain, and your brain is a muscle. And, the more you use it, the stronger it gets, and the more it works for you. And my concern of automating things is like, yes, these are great tools, but we can't have people that aren't being challenged, because as human beings, we need to be challenged. That's how we evolve. And so if you just do everything for everybody, what's left for them to do? I mean, obviously we'll create new challenges, but we can't make it so easy for our children and for our future generations. They need to connect to each other. They need to go through some of these physical things that we went through, working together. I started writing cursive again lately, just to practice.
Just to remember that we know how to do it.
Yeah.
Sure. Yeah.
And to use that part of my brain, because I want to stay sharp. I don't want to turn into jello. I mean, I remember watching a couple movies, in the past decade or two. WALL-E was one of them, and
sure.
And Idiocracy, and these movies are, it's like, are they foreshadowing?
Yeah. Well, of like 1984, different versions of 1984, if you think about it.
Yeah.
But prophecy, as they say, right? Yeah. And again, that's creative side of writing, of people understanding what's happening in the world and giving examples of it. I mean, if you really think about it, you can go back into even the Star Trek philosophies of Gene Roddenberry, and so many things that were talked about or happening or on the table to happen. For example, the creative side has always been about, well, what if we take it to the next step, as and you're right, the artificial intelligence aspect. Well, looping back around to what we were talking about earlier, in 1996, and I'm sitting here going, they want us on the couch. They want us on the couch. I mean, that's a fundamental way of agreeing with you, in a sense, that they just don't want us outside. They don't want us connecting with each other. They want to keep us on these.
Yeah, just comply. Exactly. Give me your money, do what we tell you to do. And I don't know, like, this is the thing. I don't know if it's actually intentional that this is the way the system has been. I wonder sometimes if somebody just didn't reason correctly.
I suppose, well, as investigators of intelligence, I suppose we want to know the answer to that, but ultimately, regardless of what the real reason is, we're still in the same place either way, and we've got to stop it. We have to stop it.
Well, that's why we're changing it. We're playing our parts.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. I have to send you something. I've been actually meant to do it last week. So me and three of my colleagues created something about 2.5 years ago that I want you to see. It's actually on one of my Facebook pages all the time, but I'll send it to you so you can check it out. It's a 20-minute video philosophy that we put out there after collaborating virtually, having a think tank virtually. But it resonates with me. I think you'll like it. I'll share it with you so you can check it out.
I look forward to checking it out.
Go ahead.
Oh no, you mentioned Star Trek, which actually got me thinking about Star Wars. I had never seen in my life until last year. I binged on all of them. I got Disney Plus for a year for free. And so, there was a Star Wars coming out in the theater, and I thought, well, let me watch these in order, from 1, 2, 3, not the years they came out in.
Right.
And I just thought it was brilliant. But the reason I bring this up is because, I have a heavy background in metaphysics, essentially understanding energy, understanding life and how things work. And watching this series, I realized George Lucas is brilliant.
Oh yeah,
He
totally,
understands life, and
totally.
he found a way to share it with the masses in an entertaining way. So there
Yeah.
are different levels of understanding in those movies. For some people they're just action or sci-fi, and that's actually why I
Mhm.
avoided watching them, because I don't typically like movies that are action sci-fi. But there's so much substance and truth in what he presented there. I was just blown away. I'm like, yeah,
And see, it's interesting
he
because
earned.
Lucas, as brilliant as Lucas and Star Wars is, it never reached me and will never reach me unless something changes drastically as much as Star Trek's did. And it's interesting that you say that, because so the thing that I've loved about that from a life perspective is the way that they've kept the continuity over the years of everything. The way that they've reconnected this to that, and that philosophy to this thing, this planet to that planet, this, they never forget. And what made me realize that more than anything was, particularly when the original Star Trek and the Next Generation, they had a lot of years before those two things happened, is they wrote books, and they still write books, and they have connected all of them. Like for example, they'll write books that are in real time to this series, in real time to that series, and the star dates, and the research that is done. And I actually have a couple ideas for books for them, and I'm thinking, I'm gonna have to make sure that I don't make any mistakes, because I'm sure they're checking. But there's some episodes that are just amazing in and of themselves about what the subject matter that they're dealing with from the standpoint of our social world. They cover everything, and it's missed if you're just casually watching it, and you don't really. It's like, for example, The Legend of Tarzan, and we did the latest one that just came out. And the thing that drew me to the movie, and why I continue to watch it, is that they told the truth about the colonialism of the Congo. That was the underlying foundation of it. So while you have Tarzan, the story, what they did is they told the world what Belgium did to the Congo with slavery and the diamond mining and things like that. And I hope people pay more attention to that part of it than anything else, because it tells a lot about our world. So yeah, these things are good when you have people who do the research and they tell those stories. And as you say, Lucas was a genius. I'm going to have to start sending you some Roddenberry stuff.
And I'll admit, I haven't watched much Star Trek in my life, but now you've got me curious, so I will make some time.
You're going to need a lot of it, because there's a lot of stuff. It's not just 7 movies, unfortunately. But seriously, I'll introduce you to some things that I think you'll appreciate about
Thank
some
you.
of the subject matter.
Thank you. And by the way, like what we're talking about here, at least for me, is about adaptation. So like I was saying, I used to be turned off by these kinds of movies, but then I finally decided to give them a try, and I realized, like, wow, there's so much depth to them. There's so much valuable, insight in them. That, there's the exoteric and there's the esoteric messages of these. And so if you pay attention, you'll get the deeper ones, because that's typically movies, that and productions and stuff that are big hits, they have many levels of, of meaning to them. And so being open-minded is really important to thriving in life and adapting in life. And I'm just sharing that because it's so easy for us to think that we know it all and we got it all figured out, and to be closed to different ideas. And then we end up suffering in life because we thought we had it figured out, and, can't listen to this person. Oh no, they're crazy. This is what the government's told me is the truth, or this is what my authorities told me was the truth. And, we're human. Nobody's perfect. Nobody has all the answers. We're learning new things every day. And as we do that, we're discarding things that aren't, helpful anymore, because we know better now. And that's just a fact of life, is like, we have to be gentle with ourselves, and we have to be open, like not just individually, but collectively. If we want things to change, this duopoly, this back and forth has not been working. The people have been suffering, and we need a different system in place, to bring it back to politics. Because I am running for office.
You are running for president, know, and the Federation needs you.
Okay. Yes.
or the empire, we need to, we need to take care of the, yes. May the force be with you, yes. of course.
Exactly. Well, as I was talking to my mom today, we were talking about what's going on in Russia because she grew up there. She
Mm,
came here in the 70s, and it was communist when she grew up. And she was talking about, and I need to look up his name, a Tsar that was like before Stalin and Lenin, and how everybody loved him. He was like a father to everybody.
mm.
I said, that's it. I'm like, I feel like a mother to all Americans. Like, that's why I don't have my own children. Like, I just love all people and I want to, lift my children up. And I don't mean that in
The
any
healer
kind of
in
ego
chief.
way. Yes.
The healer in chief. Yeah, so that's another Sorinne Ardeleanu slogan. Everybody, the healer in chief, the healer in chief.
Yes.
So we hadn't talked about that. So tell everybody first what's next for you.
Well, the good news is that a lot of the country is on lockdown. And I say the good news because it makes it a lot easier for me to attend conventions virtually
Mm.
because I envision this being the leanest winning campaign in the history of the United States of America. And
Yeah.
so everything is kind of coming together for that. I'm an optimist. And so I'm looking at, how can I make this a positive situation? And so it's nice to be able to participate virtually in conventions that weren't initially going to allow that.
Yeah.
So that's something, that I'm focusing on right now. I have, two campaign managers and two people helping with PR. So it's really nice to have people, to delegate to and to look out for me. I'm doing a lot of interviews. I just published an article yesterday on Thrive Global, and I'm working on another one. I realize I need to write more because people seem to resonate with my written word. Um, and it's easier to share an article than a video sometimes. Not everybody has time to tune in, but I
Sure.
enjoy doing these because
Sure.
it's a great way to share pieces of who I am, for people to get to know myself. I don't have an ego, I don't like to write about myself or talk about myself. I like to just show people who I am. And then, the other thing is, like, I think about how can I add value? Because I always find historically people running for any office, they make a lot of promises about what they're going to do when they get into office. Well, I'm doing it now. There's so much value that we can add as candidates, before we are in any kind of position. So I'm proving to people that I can add value and that I can make a difference, and essentially to make myself an asset to this country. So that, I've always envisioned this as being an organic victory for me. I don't believe in buying my way in. We saw what happened, with Bloomberg and Steyer. They just spent all this money, trying to buy, a seat at the table, and that money could have gone directly into our communities and
Mhm.
done a lot more good. And that's really a big part of, my campaign, and my focus right now is growing this as organically as possible and working with these circumstances, because I really feel that right now, unfortunately, we have some authority figures that are creating unnecessary fear and panic and chaos in the world. And I believe that I can offset that by creating calm and love and stability and hope for people. I did a Facebook Live yesterday, very short, about social closeness and, what I'm doing to stay healthy and grounded right now. And it was nice, some of the feedback I got. Somebody watched and said, "Oh, I feel better already." It's nice to be able to give
Mhm.
people some relief. And that's what I want to do, is to help people feel that they're safe in the world, that this too shall pass, like everything else. And also to understand, like, we are all human. And as human beings, we know that nothing in the physical world lasts forever, not even our bodies. We can take care of them to extend our lives, to have as easy as possible lives, but we have to realize, like, someday it'll be, not to be a pessimist, but just realistically, it might be our last day. We might not wake up tomorrow. So we have to make the best of today. We have to really feel good about who we are and where we are in the world. And I believe that that's something that I can do for people, because it is something I've been doing for people in the past. And I'm grateful that I have this opportunity to reach people that, I normally wouldn't reach, because as a presidential candidate, different people are paying attention to me. So I'm grateful that I'm making a positive, impact in those different sectors that normally don't tune into people like me.
Where do people find you?
So my website is Sorinne2020.com. That's SORINNE.com. And Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, just Sorinne2020. Pretty easy to find.
Fantastic. Well, as usual, I really have enjoyed our conversation. I look forward to next week. So everybody knows we're going to be doing these pretty frequently, you and I. And I'm glad to know you, and I look forward to our next conversation.
Thank you.
Sorinne Ardeleanu, walk the number 4, change.us, empower people for human rights. That's what we are about, and I hope that's what you are about. Check us out. Just know that you're there, support us, make donations, get involved, volunteer. We need you, we want you, you are the community. Thank you for spending part of your day with the Walk for Change.